Good afternoon, students of Chinese YMCA Secondary School. We are now going to play you the news clip from yesterday.
A 7.1 magnitude earthquake rocked central Mexico, killing at least 248 people in several states and toppling buildings in heavily populated Mexico City. The major tremor struck on the 32nd anniversary of an earthquake that killed thousands. Alan Buckner reports.
Entire buildings came crashing to the ground when the earthquake struck. The powerful tremors had people running for their lives out of shaking buildings and onto the streets. It came just 2 hours after drills were held across Mexico to mark the date of the 1985 disaster. A mix of neighborhood volunteers, police, and firefighters used trained dogs and bare hands to search through the rubble for survivors. Dust-covered people, some barely conscious and seriously injured, were rescued from the collapsed buildings. One of the most desperate efforts was at a primary and secondary school in southern Mexico City, where a wing of a 3-story building collapsed into a mass of concrete floor slabs. More than 24 bodies were reported found, almost all of them children. The rescue was punctuated by cries of "quiet," so searchers could listen for any faint calls of help. The searchers shored up the fallen concrete slabs with wooden beams so they wouldn't collapse further and crush whatever airspaces there were. President Enrique Peña Nieto released a video urging people to be calm. He said 40% of Mexico City was without power, as was 60% of nearby Morelos state. But he said the priority at the moment was to keep rescuing people who were still trapped and providing medical attention for the injured. He later visited the school where rescue efforts were underway. He said more than 24 people at the school were still missing. The quake's epicenter was about 120 kilometers southeast of Mexico City. Much of the city is built on a former lake bed, and the soil can amplify the effects of earthquakes centered hundreds of kilometers away. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Hurricane Maria was a Category 5 storm when it tore up the Caribbean island of Dominica earlier this week and killed at least 2 people. Now Puerto Rico is bracing for a direct hit of what experts call the most catastrophic storm to hit the U.S. territory in a century. Sonia Artero reports.
Hurricane Maria's ferocious winds and lashing rain are already hitting Puerto Rico hard. The monster storm is now packing winds of 280 kilometers per hour. The governor of the U.S. territory told his people to brace for a life-threatening storm.
We have not experienced an event of this magnitude in our modern history. Although it looks like a direct hit with major damage to Puerto Rico is inevitable, I ask for America's prayers.
He instructed residents to evacuate to shelters as his government prepared for the worst.
My administration has done everything within our power to prepare for this event and to protect the lives of everyone in the island, including establishing over 500 shelters.
Puerto Rican residents heeded that warning by flocking to shelters to protect themselves from the second maximum strength storm to hit the Caribbean this month. The Dominican Republic stepped up preparations for Maria as it came under a hurricane warning advisory. The government quickly packed up emergency food supplies and trimmed back trees. Maria already wrecked the tiny island of Dominica with widespread devastation. The storm knocked out all communications, and 70% of homes lost their roofs. It also pounded the island of Guadeloupe, claiming at least 2 lives there. The French overseas territory of Martinique felt the impact but escaped largely unscathed. Since catastrophic storms are becoming commonplace in the Caribbean, British entrepreneur and philanthropist Sir Richard Branson is calling for a Marshall Plan of redevelopment.
Instead of bringing in normal generators, let's bring in the power generators. Let's make sure that we use this as an opportunity to start afresh and and have a clean Caribbean.
Sonia Artero, TVB News.
U.S. President Donald Trump stunned delegates at the United Nations when he warned his country would totally destroy North Korea if it threatened to attack. In a hard-edged maiden speech to the UN General Assembly, Trump also mocked the North Korean leader as a rocket man for his repeated missile tests.
Delegates held their breath as U.S. President Donald Trump prepared to deliver his maiden speech to the UN General Assembly. And the controversial American leader laid it thick with more hostile rhetoric against North Korea. Trump stressed that Washington's patience with Pyongyang had almost run out and that America was fed up with the constant missile launches and nuclear tests. He warned that if North Korea continued down its current path, it would reap a whirlwind of destruction.
The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea.
He urged the world's nations to unite to counter Pyongyang and warned America would put pressure on countries which continue to trade with North Korea.
It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict.
Trump even made an allusion to Kim Jong-un in his speech, apparently taking inspiration from an Elton John song and forming a nickname for the North Korean leader.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
North Korea wasn't the only thing Trump wanted to get off his chest. He called the 2015 deal to rein in Iran's nuclear program one-sided and an embarrassment to the United States. Trump also took aim at Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, blaming him and his government for crashing his country's economy and causing untold misery to its people.
The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Their democratic institutions are being destroyed. This situation is completely unacceptable, and we cannot stand by and watch.
Also, Trump praised international efforts to destroy the Islamic State, while reminding the world of the crimes perpetrated by the Syrian government, including the use of poison gas against its own people.
In Washington, a Senate panel probing alleged Russian interference in the 2016 election abruptly cancelled an interview with President Donald Trump's personal lawyer. A swarm of reporters demanded answers from Michael Cohen as word surfaced that he had issued a statement about his testimony in violation of committee policy. However, Cohen was later asked to appear at an open hearing on October the 25th. Meantime, former U.S. Ambassador to China John Huntsman was grilled by the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as President Trump's nominee to be ambassador to Russia. That's where the current Utah government was adamant Moscow did meddle in the 2016 U.S. election.
There is no question, underline no question, that the Russian government interfered in the U.S. election last year, and Moscow continues to meddle in the democratic processes of our friends and allies.
To local news now. After announcing details about a scheme providing transitional housing for the needy yesterday, the Hong Kong Council of Social Service isn't stopping there. Today, it also revealed a plan to rent out shipping container homes for the same purpose. And they've even already found land to do it. Winner Wong reports.
It's an idea that's been in talks for months. The Hong Kong Council of Social Service even sent a team to the Netherlands last year to observe how the country came to develop the world's largest container house village. These houses are put together using simple methods and provide basic facilities including water and power supplies, a bathroom, and cooking components. The council says at this stage, a developer has already agreed to rent out land to build Hong Kong's own cluster of shipping container homes for a symbolic rent of $1. The land is expected to be about 7,000 square feet in area. It will host about 80 units ranging from 160 to 320 square feet and fit about 2 to 5 people each. The council hopes to have the houses up and running by next year, but first it will have to solve problems residents of these homes will face, such as the city's hot weather and typhoon safety. President of the Institute of Engineers Ira Chan says the problem of heat can be easily fixed with insulation boards, and as long as the containers are stacked no more than 2 units high, typhoons should not pose too much of a threat to them. Secretary for Development Michael Wong says the government holds an open attitude towards new ideas. But he also said if the city has land to spare, authorities need to consider whether it's better to use them for temporary or permanent housing. He also did not say whether Carrie Lam's maiden policy address to be delivered next month will touch on the topic. Winna Wong, TVB News.